In this episode, I'm gonna show you how I made this rad setup. I actually had to move things around quite a bit because I was so close to the headers and there wasn't enough room for the actual fans to pull air through the rad efficiently to get it out through the hood here. So I made a couple mounts here and they have holes in it so the pin goes right through on the rad and it's going to be very sturdy. I just need to rigid the top a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm making a plate of aluminum that's going to be right screwed to my frame here and it's going to be fully sealed. So all this open gap is going to be shut and then it's going to attach to the side of my rad here and that's going to act as an actual barrier from the outside air to the inside air. So more air is going to be forced through the rad and exit through the hood rather than it going around and through the hood and making less vacuum through the rad. All right, it's time to see if they fit in there and I'm gonna have all this covered and it's gonna be all sealed. So let's take a peek right here. See what she does, bud. And look at that. That is 100% sealed. And I'm gonna try this side too. There we go. So as you can see, it's fully sealed now. That is looking nice. It looks much more professional, I'd say, because there's no holes to the engine bay at all. It's completely sealed. There's the plate there and then there's the plate there. So it's all tidy in there. So what I'm gonna have to do is screw it to the frame and then I'm going to have to make mounts from the rad to here and that's how I'm gonna be actually mounting this rad. So I don't actually have self tappers. I just looked all around my shop and I want to order nice stainless ones. So I'm gonna continue on and mount my intercooler, which is full of water. This is water air intercooler. And I'm going to make these, well, I've already made them and weld these on there. I've already got one there, so I'm going to add one the same distance away from that side of the rad. There she was, and there she is. Sweet, so that is looking aight, if you know what I'm saying. So I've got to make mounts for the top now that are gonna attach to the rad, but I can't have it actually touching because I don't want to heat soak this intercooler right here because that would not be good because it's gonna cool the air that's going through here. So I do not want hot air going through my engines. I have to have this about 1/4 inch away from the rad just to make sure nothing is going to heat soak. So I'm going to weld something from here to there. So I'm gonna put a rubber in between the actual piece of metal here, which is aluminum, obviously. Just gonna thread it down because that is what's gonna be there when I actually install it. I need to coordinate for that thickness there, so I'm just gonna have her set up there, just like so, and then I'm gonna tack it in. So I'm gonna carry on and do a couple other things. In here is a very, very cool part. As you know, I have a whole sit turbo off of a Cummins on my car for my both turbos, and I have the internal wastegate, and I cannot adjust the actual boost pressure efficiently. You can adjust it from here a little bit, but that is very Jimmy-like. And honestly, I'm done with that for now with especially boost. So I'm going to put on an adjustable wastegate and I'm going to be able to adjust the boost with springs and or an actual boost controller. So that's going to be so sick. It's actually going to be very adjustable. I can go from basically 5 to 40 pounds of boost if I want. So I've got a huge, huge variety on what I run for power. So I feel a lot better about that. Let's bolt them on. It says it's for a Cummins diesel black 35 PSI. Little did they know this is going on an MX3. Ooh, ooh. So after reading the directions, I have to actually remove this and see what spring's in it. It seems like it's a really hard spring, so I don't want to run that. But for my first time I start the car and run it, I'm going to be running about 10 to 15 pounds on my first break-in. So I don't want to actually like really push it right away because I want to break in the engine. All right, this is where things get dangerous. This thing is under so much pressure. Holy. Jeez. This thing's set up for like 35 pounds of boost. Oh my God. So it's already got an inner and an outer spring. Obviously it's meant for like a high amount of boost for the Cummins, right? So I'm not gonna be running that type of boost at the gate, but I will eventually, but not yet. So there's a big spring, there's a little spring. So what I've gathered from this chart is if I want 10 pounds of boost, I use the small spring. If I want 25 pounds of boost, I use the big spring. And then if I want 35 pounds of boost, I'll use the big and small one. So this is the small one, this is the big one. This one alone will do 25 PSI, and this one alone will do 10, but when they're combined, they'll do 35. It would have actually done 35 pounds of boost, and that would have been like 700 horsepower out of the gate. And that's a little saucy for this first hit, so ease into it, break in the engines, and then turn it right up. I'm just gonna run this 10-pound spring for now. On 10 pounds of boost, it should make well over 400 horsepower, probably 450, so that'll be a good start. Okay, so here is my engine bay. If you haven't seen it, check the link up above in the last video, homepage on my channel, watch that video. Anyways, I'm gonna remove this. This is the factory wastegate setup, and it is garbage to me. I don't want it anymore, so I'm gonna remove these bolts, and then I'm going to rig up my new one. Yeah. So now I'm going to adjust this arm until it barely fits over. And it says I want 2 millimeters of pressure. So what I'm looking for is pressure in the right direction of 2 millimeters. So if I can slide this on easily, that's not 2 mil. So I'm looking for about 1 mil more. I think I've got about 1 already, so I'm gonna add a little more. And what I'm gonna do is 2 full turns, and then I'm going to pull it on, and then it's gonna have a good amount of preload. I think it's a little bit more than 2 millimeters, but that's good because I have a very light spring in there. It's a 10-pound spring, and I want it to hold shut until it actually wants to open. All right, so I've got the self-tappers now, so what I'm gonna do is pre-drill holes, and then I'm going to drill in that plate that I made that fit in here for the rad. I'm done with the turbo stuff for now because I was waiting, but that is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna clean off all this oil coating and then put that on and screw it in. That looks pretty stellar, to be honest. This is literally 1 sheet of aluminum and a bunch of steel screws, and it's looking pretty sweet. So I'm gonna do it to the other side, and then I will be able to figure out what I need to do for structural, because as I push here a little bit, it'll actually bend in about 1/2 mil. So I'm probably going to run a 90-degree piece in here just to ridge it up a bit. And this will actually be really solid, I think, because then I'm gonna make a bracket welded to the rad to there, and it'll just be 1 bolt, right? But yeah, that is looking really good. Now the whole front is aluminum, and it's aluminum, rad, rad does aluminum, and then aluminum. So it's a whole aluminum front. It's pretty sweet. And another cool thing is when this is bolted together, it's going to be fairly sealed. So as you can see, it's like pretty dark in the engine bay now because there's no light even going through. So while I'm driving and the wind is going to the front of the car, the only place for it to go in is through the rads and outside of the hood. The hood's gonna have an opening obviously for this stuff. So that is going to be an exit for the rad air, and then down, because down still has openings. But people don't realize how important it is to seal off your front rad to everything else, because the air would go around it. So if this was open about like 2 inches like it was, the air could potentially go around, and it makes less pressure to the rad, and that makes a huge difference. Even if you have a small rad, you can make a small rad work with that actual theory. Now let's see if I can get the rad out. I have everything so tight, so it might actually not come out. I might have to adjust some things, but let's see. Now let's see if I can get it back in. Yep. So I have 2 pins down here, so it actually goes through a piece of steel. So that is what's holding the bottom in, and there's no bolts required. So it's only gonna be bolted in 2 spots that I'm going to make, and then it's just gonna slide in and out, really easy to remove, and it's gonna be very sealed and very functional. I'm gonna take these pieces back out, and I'm going to weld a piece across here, 90 degrees, just to rigid this up a bit because it's a little floopy. So I'm gonna do the same to this one. All right, so I took my headlights out, and now I can get in easily to the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna weld a plate to the rad, but down there, just where I'm going to come across with here, because this is gonna be the strongest point on this plate for the mount to the actual rad. So I'm gonna be about this high on the back, welding that in. Then I'm going to be welding this brace in as well. I'm gonna see if I can tack them into the car, just like so, and we'll see how that goes. And then I'll be able to drill a hole right through both. I'll be able to drill here, and then it'll go through the rad. Then I'll be able to put a nut and bolt on it. And it'll be literally 2 bolts holding this entire rad setup together, and the intercooler will come with it. It'll be so slick. Dimes, baby. And it looks mad sexy. So I am going to drill my hole through here into the plate that is welded to the rad, like I showed you. And then there's just gonna be 1 bolt and 1 nut on each side, and that's gonna hold the entire rad in, and it's much, 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 much stronger with this brace that I put in. And just like that, she's bolted up just with 1 there and 1 there. So 1 on each side, and it is looking very, very clean. This is centered now, it looks awesome. Like honestly, I'm really, really, really pumped on how this turned out, and it just really tied in the look as well, and it's gonna be very easy to take apart. 2 bolts, boom, both the rads come out. 1 is the intercooler, 1 is the rad, and it is just gonna be completely out of the way. 4 bolts get this bash bar out of the way, and literally everything is here. So boom, that's all gone, and everything would be gone. So that is so, so sweet. I have a huge rad in here now with a huge shroud with 2 huge fans. This thing's gonna cool down really, really good, and I can't wait to see how it's actually gonna perform, because I've always had problems with cooling because I never really paid a big amount of attention to setups like this with big rads and actually having ducting to some extent on it.